In this video, we will test ourselves against some king and pawn versus king positions. We will use our knowledge of the opposition, pawn rank, and key squares to analyze and solve each position. Let's start with position 1. Here, white has a pawn on the 6th rank supported by the king. This is already a huge signal. A pawn on the 6th rank wins if the king can take the opposition beside the pawn. In this position, white can do that in two different ways. The most direct move is king h5. Now, the black king must step back, either king h8 or king g8. The pawn controls g7, so black has no way to stay any closer. If black plays king h8, white simply plays king h6, taking the opposition. Now, king g8, king g6. The white king has the opposition beside the pawn on the 6th rank. The pawn promotes. If black instead plays king g8 right away, we reach the same position even faster, and again the pawn promotes. This is a pattern many beginners miss. On the 6th rank, opposition beside the pawn is enough. Once you see that, the position almost solves itself. There is a second winning plan here, starting with king f5. From f5, white is aiming at the key square e7, which gives another path to promotion. Consider king f5, king g8, king e6. Now black tries to stop the king from reaching e7 with king f8. But look at the position carefully. Even though e7 is blocked, white has achieved opposition beside the pawn. That means white can safely play f7 without check, and the pawn promotes. So in this position, both plans work because the key idea is the same. A pawn on the 6th rank supported by the king having the opposition is winning. Now let's look at position 2. Black to move. Can black hold the draw? White has a pawn on the 6th rank. If it were white's turn, he could simply push the pawn and promote it. Black plays king b7. Black takes the opposition, blocking the white king. This looks bad for white. Gaining the opposition in front of the pawn is hopeless, but the pawn is on the 6th rank, and this is where beginners go wrong, because they don't consider opposition beside the pawn. Is that possible here? Pause the video and work out your analysis of this position. White begins with king c5. Now black has a problem. He would like to play king c7, keeping the white king at bay, but the pawn prevents that. So instead, black tries king c8. And now the idea is clear. White simply plays king c6, taking the opposition beside the pawn. Once that happens, the outcome is decided. The pawn promotes. Let's go back. After white plays king c5, suppose black plays king b8. Here, white must be careful. A beginner might play the aggressive-looking king c6. But then black simply takes the opposition. White is blocked, and this position is drawn. However, king b6, king c8, king c6, and the pawn will promote. Let's go back. After king c5, king b8, white can also play king d5, looking to get the king to the e7 square. Then king c8, king e6, king c6 also works, king d8, and white has the opposition beside the pawn, and the pawn promotes. In this position, we used our knowledge of opposition beside the pawn on the 6th to powerfully promote the pawn. Let's look at position 3. White to move. The problem here is that white cannot get opposition in front of the pawn. Pause the video and analyze this position. See if you can solve it. The problem for the beginner is that he sees white cannot get the opposition in front of the pawn and is tempted to conclude that this position is a draw. However, the pawn is on the 5th rank. Based on our previous study, we understand that as long as we can get our king in front of the pawn on the 5th rank, the pawn will promote. This idea is summarized in the key squares, here marked in green. If the white king occupies any of these squares, the pawn will promote. White plays king c6. Black takes the opposition, king c8, and white plays d6 and has gained the opposition beside the pawn. The pawn will promote. Let's look at position 4. This time it's black to move. At first glance, it looks like white will simply walk the king in front of the pawn and then promote. For example, king d5 followed by king e6. How could black possibly stop this? Pause the video for a moment and see if you can spot black's resource. Let's start by recognizing that the pawn is not on the 6th, nor even on the 5th rank. White must gain the opposition in front of the pawn in order to promote. Perhaps black can use this knowledge. Suppose black plays king c7, rushing the king forward to the fight. Kings must be active, after all. This strong-looking move actually hands the win to white. Now white plays king c5, taking the opposition. Now king d7, but white simply replies king d5, and play continues king e7, king c6, and now the king stands on the 6th rank in front of the pawn. From here, the pawn will promote. Let's go back. King c7 actually loses. What should black play? The only move that holds the draw is king c8, taking the distant opposition. The distant opposition is an idea we've mentioned but not fully explained. The key point is this: distant opposition can be converted into direct opposition. After king c8, white can no longer gain the opposition in front of the pawn. For example, if white plays king d5, black replies king d7, taking the opposition and blocking the white king. No matter how white tries to approach, black can take the opposition and block the king. The white king makes no progress, and the position is drawn. Let's look at position 5. This position is a tragicomedy given in Dvoretsky's endgame manual and demonstrates how easy it is to go astray. White plays rook f4, offering an exchange of rooks. Undoubtedly, white expected rook takes g4, king takes g4, and the position is a draw. Black, however, surprised white and found a winning resource. Pause the video and see if you can find it. What should black play? King g5. Now, white is lost. For example, rook takes f5, king takes f5, and black has the opposition in front of his pawn. This pawn will promote. Here in position 6 is another tragicomedy from Dvoretsky's Endgame manual. In this position, with white to move, white resigned. This is unfortunate. White saw that he must lose the pawn, but failed to realize that black would not be able to achieve the opposition. For example, king d4, king f5, king d3, king e5, king d2, king takes d5, king d3 is one of the many lines that holds the draw for white. Now, position 7 is a well-known position taken from Fundamental Chess Endings by Müller and Lamprecht. It was first published by Dertina in 1908. What should white play? From our study of key squares, we know that white's king must reach b5, c5, or d5 in order to promote the pawn. The most straightforward plan looks simple enough. White plays king d2. Black replies king e7. Then king d3, king d6, king d4, and white takes the opposition in front of the pawn. But let's step back. What if black plays king d7, taking the distant opposition? If white now continues with king d4, black replies king d6, and the white king is blocked and makes no progress. So the obvious plan fails. Let's go back. Is there really no way for white to make progress, to promote the pawn? Pause the video here and see if you can find white's resource. Remember that we don't need to calculate all the way to promotion. We only need to reach a key square. With this in mind, white should start with king c2. Now, king e7, king b3, king d6, king b4. The white king is threatening to occupy the key square b5. Black responds, king c6, preventing white from occupying that key square. But now white continues, king c4. Now the point becomes clear. White has gained the opposition in front of the pawn, and the king is ready to occupy a key square. From here, the pawn will promote. In this video, we've looked at several king and pawn endings that are often difficult for beginners to analyze. But by focusing on a few core ideas, opposition, pawn rank, and key squares, these positions become much easier to understand. In the next video, we'll turn our attention to pawns closer to the edge of the board and see how these same ideas change. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.